All right. Hey, everybody. You guys able to hear me okay? Okay, cool. Looks like everybody's coming in, so go ahead and get started. So just to start with, let's go through some logistics. First thing to talk about, your early prototypes. I've put up an assignment to describe what those are, and they're due on Tuesday, the 22nd. So let's just go through it real quickly so you can get an idea of kind of what we're looking for. So this is for your semester project. You're going to move from, you've done your sketches, and I should say about sketches while I'm thinking about it. I had sent feedback to everybody on their sketches. Everybody did really well, and a handful of people didn't quite meet all of the requirements of what was needed for the checkpoint. That's okay. I've sent you feedback and asked you to please submit any of the missing parts of it, which I've written in your sketches what you need to add, just to submit those by Sunday at midnight. And if you can do that, then that will be great, and be able to get your full credit for the project on that. But again, that's not to say everybody had great sketches. It's just a few didn't have the different design alternatives that you needed. So if you have questions about that, you can send a comment on Canvas or email me or whatever you need to do. But hopefully you've got the feedback there in the sketches, and you can just submit those additional sketches if you need to, and we'll be all good on that. So now moving to prototypes. So this will be taking kind of what you've sketched and the thing that you're making for the semester, and making a first prototype of that. For most of us here, we're doing apps, software stuff. A few of us are doing hardware. So what you'll want to do is choose one of those tools that we went over last lecture, and they're on Canvas. There's a list of them. One of those tools, or if you find another tool that works well for you, and learn to use the tool well enough so that you can lay out a comprehensive version of your product, the thing you're making. But it doesn't need to be high fidelity. So the idea is, if you're making an app and you've got like 4 or 5 different screens, right? You need to have all of those screens represented somehow, and it may just be a blank rectangle with a text box on it that says settings or whatever. And then you need to make it interactive in some way. And I suggest the easiest way to do that is to make it where you can navigate between those screens, right? So have a button or a graphic element, whatever you're going to have there, where when you click on it, it moves you to the correct screens. And that's kind of the bare minimum. So obviously aim higher, but we want to get this done, before Tuesday. And the idea is just to get you working with some of this prototype software, get you to a point where you're starting to be more comfortable with the prototyping software. I should say, if you use a specific software or tool and you don't like it after a while, you're more than welcome to change at any point. This doesn't lock you in, but we just need to pick something to start with. So there's a question. If we're working in groups, do both people need to turn in early prototype or just one person? That is a good question, and I will continue down this list and I will cover that. Okay, so minimum requirements has to represent all the functionality of your product. Obviously, you may not know all of the details of that, but everything that you think your product will have at this point has to be interactive in some way. You have to be able to give me the prototype and let me use it. So pretty much all of the software packages will let you save out a file. So please save out those files and submit them. Most of the software packages also allow you to have a link so that somebody can go to your live project and play with it. You can include the link too, but be sure to include actual files. If for some reason you can't export the files that represent your prototype, let me know about that, and we'll do that case by case. But it is important that you do submit some files just so we have that preserved. If you're doing software, you're more than welcome to submit a link in addition to the files. If you're making some hardware thing, what you're going to need to do is capture the thing that you've made and its interactive abilities. I would suggest you do that by recording a video of you using it and submitting that, or submitting a link to a video. I don't think too many of us are focused on that. If you've got hardware in your sketches but you don't want to go any further than sketches with that, that's fine too. You can just do the software. Okay, so this will answer the team's question. So if you're working with other people in the class, you should work together at this point if you're on a team. You should collaborate to build your prototype. Both of you should turn in your prototype, and if you're on a team, you just need to write a short paragraph to tell me what you did on the prototype. So if you're a team, I'm expecting that you're either building something bigger or putting more detailed effort into it. So just tell me, which part you worked on, which part other team members worked on, and it can be just a brief summary, just so we make sure everybody is putting in effort and learning how to build a prototype. So also, if you're on a team, if you want to have one person build a prototype of doing it one way and one person doing it the other way, that's fine. If you have hardware and software, you can have some people work on hardware, some on software. Just make sure you, in that short little paragraph, tell me what each person did. But you do all need to submit the prototype files and that paragraph, just because it helps me keep track of everyone and make sure that you've got credit for everything. And if you're on a team, be sure you contribute at the same level that someone working on their own project would. So don't try to take a free ride on a team. That's never good. All right, so that's due on Tuesday. Are there other questions about that? Okay, I'm going to keep moving, but if you got questions, just throw them in there. Okay, also up on Canvas now is our fourth reflection. And for this reflection, what we're going to do is just jump into it here. I've got a link, and this is to Apple's developer website. And it's all of the videos from their developer conferences, and they put out a few not at their conferences, dealing with design and HCI and interaction design and prototyping. And so what you're going to do is go there, pull up that website, and it'll list out a bunch of videos, kind of scroll through them, find one or two that's interesting to you. So the idea is I want everybody to try to watch at least 20 minutes of content. So some of their videos are 10 minutes long, some of them are an hour long. So if you're watching like a 5-minute or a 10-minute, make sure you watch one or two so that you get at least 20 minutes of content. But try to pick something that looks interesting to you. There are a lot of options. And for your reflection, what you'll do is just provide the name of the videos and links to them. And we've got a question on the prototype. So the question is, if I used Figma and I wanted to switch to Adobe, is that possible, or would I have to restart? Yeah, so that's a great question. So there is some compatibility now between Figma and Adobe XD. So you probably would not have to start like from scratch necessarily. I don't know if they can import each other's projects directly. That may be the case though. So there's definitely like the assets and the artwork and stuff. That's all exportable. I'm not sure about like if you've prototyped stuff in detail, how easily that's transferable. Like if you've got a bunch of animations and stuff. But yeah, you could definitely switch at any time. That's totally up to you, and I think it's pretty easy usually to do. Okay. So on a reflection, you'll just give the name of the video or videos you watched, give a summary of what you thought was the most important information in the video, and then provide your opinion of was it worthwhile? Look, obviously it was interesting to you if you chose it. Did it deliver? And should we all go watch this video or not? And so that'll be due Monday at midnight, and then we'll talk about it a little bit in class on Tuesday. But I think you'll enjoy this assignment. If you haven't, or if you aren't familiar with these videos, they have kind of a wide variety of things, and usually they're pretty good. So most of them they're kind of done in a presentation style, but they'll also include actual hands-on design demos, or actually writing code or going through something, and it's all related to Apple products, but that spans quite a few areas now. So it's actually a pretty nice resource to have. So that should be an enjoyable reflection, I think. Okay, so let's go ahead and start talking about interfaces. So last time we talked about development methods and tools, and we talked about the idea of an interface existing somewhere in the world, and that we have to think about its context, which we kind of do at every step of this, right? We're always focused on where's the user, what are their goals, but also thinking about where is our app or our product going to live. Talked about interface design tools, and we watched the video of Apple's HyperCard that they had 30 years ago, and kind of all the things that it could do. And then we also talked about some of the more modern tools. And so we touched on Figma, Just in Mind, and Adobe XD in class, but I've also on the Canvas page for design and prototyping tools listed out a bunch of kind of the most feature-rich and most up-to-date, most popular tools that are in use today. And so that's a good place to start looking if you're thinking about building your prototype. And if you find anything that's not on the list that's also good, please add a discussion topic, or post it so that everyone else can see and can try it out too, because there's a lot out there. And so we looked at some designs with some of those products for this little fake smart nightlight project. And then we started to discuss what are the problems in terms of using these design products that are meant to, kind of be used without any code, but also, easy to just lay out your design. And we discussed that they don't, I don't know if we discussed this really in great detail, but I think it kind of it's obvious that these tools aren't producing actual applications that can be used, or actual software that you could push out to a user. These are meant just for prototyping. So that's one thing to think about in terms of if you put a lot of effort into prototyping something in one of these tools, what's the process going to be like to move that into an actual product? And so that can be one of the downsides, is that you can duplicate a lot of work. Now, obviously, these tools, as they evolve, people are working to try to make it where you can actually export assets from these easy design tools over into other tools that allow you to build, kind of production-ready software, so that you don't waste so much of that effort. But it's still a challenge right now. We also discussed that there's a wide variety of devices out there. Sometimes the design tools just don't allow you to create something that is responsive to all of those devices that something might be experienced across. So some of the design tools can be rigid in terms of you need to kind of lay out everything for each screen size that you want, or today more they have constraints that kind of you need to specify how it's going to lay out whenever the screen size changes. When you're not working in a design tool, you have a little more direct access to that. We also talked about platforms are constantly changing, so if you're going to be running on specific platforms, you've got to be concerned about that. And we talked about that historically these design tools haven't always facilitated every interaction we needed. And one example was that just a year ago, some of these major design tools didn't easily support the kind of like little simple slider that I illustrated making out of a couple of shapes last time. So now they do. It's gotten a lot better. So there's a lot more you can do in terms of interaction, but there are definitely still limits. So we've got to remember that. And then we've got to remember that these are prototyping tools. So I don't think we talked about this, but I should mention that kind of one of the classic prototyping tools that's really easy to use is just like PowerPoint or Keynote or Pages, because you can make links on slides, right? And that's got all the animation stuff kind of built into it already. So you can actually kind of mock up an app, in a pretty decent way inside there of just presentation software, where you start to see problems. Obviously, well, you can't deploy it on anything, but some of the problems are like if you want to, fetch data or, do something dynamic or save data or save your state, it becomes real complicated. And the design tools have struggled with that too. They've gotten better with it, but obviously there's still going to be these weird things that you have to kind of hack around to support. And so it's a trade-off between how much effort do you want to put into making this prototyping tool do something for you versus is it maybe worth it to just go ahead and design a little bit closer to something that can be used in your final product. So plugins and extensions are making this better, and we'll continue to look at that. I think I might touch on some of those topics next week a little bit. I will see if I can fit them in with some of our other stuff, so that we can kind of stay up to date on it and kind of keep track of the latest things. So today we are going to be focusing on using web technologies. And so we raised the question last time of why, and we talked about it being very standardized, that's not going away, that it can do a lot, and that it's really pretty useful. And so it's a different type of investment in terms of learning, right? Learning a prototyping tool versus learning, the things you need to know for doing web development. They're both a type of, investment, and they're both skills. But I'd argue that the web tools are more valuable in the long run, certainly, and will be more beneficial. So let's talk about building UIs using web technologies. So we're going to discuss the basics of kind of web technologies, and I know that a lot of people are familiar somewhat with this, but stay with me, because we're going to kind of make sure we have a good foundation and a good mindset going into this so that we really have a grasp on how we go about building things with these technologies. So we've got three major components to a modern web stack. And I should say, when I say web, I just mean things that render in a browser, like Firefox, Chrome, Safari, but also a lot of applications that you open on your phone. They're simply wrappers around a browser, where the actual application is written using web technologies, and there are some things kind of shimmed in and bundled with a browser, and then it's packaged up and shipped out to app stores, and it downloads as an app. But the underlying technology is this web technology. So those are kind of the two areas to think about. So there's three components to it. There's HTML, which is kind of a structuring. It's a markup language, and it gives structure to a document or to an application. There's CSS, which is cascading style sheets, and it's more concerned with styling things, the way things look and behave visually and how they lay out. And then there's JavaScript, and that's kind of the interactive element of it. How do you make things do things based on user behavior or other events? So that's kind of the powerhouse underneath all of it. So I'm gonna talk about each of these just a little bit to give you some background. So HTML, big thing to know, it's not a programming language, it's a markup language. We can argue about what that really means, it doesn't matter though. This is the guy who created it, Tim Berners-Lee, and so he kind of developed it, I guess, formally in the 1990s, late 1990s. And then standards started to be developed beginning, I think, in 1997. There's been different standards of HTML specifying what it is. I've got some links throughout this presentation to give you some resources if you're interested in these specific things. But initially, this was meant to be a way to structure a document or information for presentation over the internet through browsers, which is what we know as World Wide Web. Oh, there's a question. So what's the difference between a markup language and a programming language? Is a markup language one that just gives structure? I'm going to go ahead and say that's a good way to summarize it. I don't want to authoritatively say that. I'm sure there are a lot of sensitivities here with people who think one thing or another, but in general, a markup language is it doesn't specify any kind of like action or procedure, right? So yeah, it just kind of annotates things, and then it gets processed by something else, and it renders out something. So yeah, the description you've given is good. It just gives structure. It doesn't give instructions necessarily. Yeah, that's a good question. So initially, the markup language existed, and it was served out to your browser, and browsers would read the markup language and decide how they should make things look based on it. So if you said something was a heading element, the browser would decide, should a heading be bold? Should the font size be 16? Should it be 24? And believe it or not, this is still the case today. You can still, in every browser, load your own custom styling of just the base HTML. And these are the things that are like, if you see a website today that's unstyled, right, you'll see like the link is blue by default. Okay, that's in there. It's in the browsers as how to interpret, a hyperlink and how to show it. You can override that as the user. And at one point, that was a pretty popular thing to do. So there are two big types of elements we want to talk about when we think about HTML. And we're going to look at some actual basic HTML code, so you'll get a good sense of this. But we've got block elements and we've got inline elements. And so HTML will nest these elements so they can be within each other. So when we think about how something is going to appear on the page, a block element, conceptually, it occupies its own line on the page, and it can contain other elements. Whereas an inline element doesn't require its own line across the page. And this becomes important when we start to lay things out. It's not something you have to think about actively all day, but it is something to tuck away in the back of your mind that might be helpful later, is that there are these two types of elements and they behave differently. So let's take a look at an example here. So this is a very simple page that I've created here. Okay, so on the left, you can see this is the HTML document, and it is all of 12 lines long. And you can see this structure, okay? And on the right is what it looks like in Firefox if you were to open this page up. And it's that real basic look that a lot of us know. So you can see within this code, right, we start kind of up here on line 1, and we've got, this is just a declaration that we're using HTML, okay? And so you can see this kind of just stands alone. Then the main page is between this HTML tag here, and then there's a matching closing tag here with the slash on it, /HTML. So these are paired, right? And you see these pairs throughout the page. Yes, somebody's commenting on the website. Yeah, it is a that website I've linked there that says "Click for Sadness" is a hideous website, and it's pretty great. You visit if you haven't. So we've got the HTML element. Then you'll see there's this block here with these two head tags, right? This data is not shown in the actual page. So you can see there's this meta, and you can see each tag has a name. Like this one's meta, this is HTML and head, right? And they can have attributes within them. So we've got char set equals, and then in quotes we've got UTF-8, which is the character set that we're using. And you'll notice there's a slash at the end of this tag because it's closing itself. Like down here we had this /HTML to pair with this top HTML. Well, this element doesn't have a closing tag. It closes itself, self-closing. More recent versions of HTML, you don't even have to put that slash if something's self-closing. But then we've got this title element, which I've got Zack's homepage. And so if you look over here, you can see up in the tab, it says Zack's homepage, not page, right? That's coming from down here. So this is telling the browser, what to put in that title bar there. And so there are a lot of things we can do in this head element that aren't directly rendered on the page. And we'll see more of that as we go. So then in my actual page, it's between these two body tags. And I've got a H1 element, which is just a heading level 1. So there are just, I think there are 6 H1 through H6 levels within HTML by default. And they're all styled a little bit differently. This is the biggest one. And so that's just directly rendering, this here. Question about the character set. It's not the font, actually. So it's the actual character set. So early on, if you remember early computers, we used ASCII, where we kind of had a number that translated exactly to a letter, and that was okay. But obviously, the English alphabet is not the end of everything, and there are a lot more characters out there we'd like to represent. A lot of emojis as well, and so the character set UTF-8 is a character set that contains a lot more characters in it. So yeah, and there's UTF-16 as well, but UTF-8 is kind of the default right now. So we can put lots of cool things in it. But yeah, that's a good question. We'll get to the font later. So then after my H1, I've got a P tag, which stands for paragraph, and I've got the welcome, here are my favorite links, and then within that P tag, I've got nested a strong tag, which you can see over here renders as making this bold. Pretty simple. And And then after the paragraph, I've used an A tag, which has this href attribute, and that's telling it where to link to. So everything in here is going to be the link. Click for sadness, and when you click on it, it will take you to that link there. And then when I'm done, I close the body. So very simple HTML page. Now, let's talk a little bit about making this look better. So cascading style sheets. And these are, this is a kind of a way to describe how elements on the page should look, the style. So kind of came about also in the late 90s and got standardized probably, some of these early standards like 1996 for the first one. But definitely by the year 2000 and forward, we had standard cascading style sheets. So what CSS is concerned with is, what color are things, what's the font, how is it positioned on the page, kind of all of the visual aspects of it. More recent versions of cascading style sheets have actually allowed you to incorporate things into the style sheets like small animations, some state data. So kind of taking a little bit of the interactive side and moving it into style sheets lately. Historically, that's not the case. But here are some good links if you want more information about CSS in general. But let's take a look at adding it to the little simple example that we've been working with. So here you can see this is the same homepage code that I had earlier, but I've added one line, and that's right under my title. In this head section, I've added a link. And in this rel attribute, I've said it's a style sheet, so it's a CSS style sheet. And href, I'm just giving it the file name of where my style sheet content is at, which in my case, I've just named the file greatcss.css. You'll also notice that I've changed a couple of things. I've added in my h1 tag here a class attribute that I've called beautiful title. If you haven't noticed yet, I am making these things up as I go. You can name these things whatever I want for the most part. And so now let's take a look at the corresponding style sheet that goes with that. Okay, so here is my greatcss.css file. And within it, it's just a 15-line of code file. I've got, first of all, this .beautiful title. And that's just how I tell CSS that between these two curly braces, I want to affect things that have the class beautiful title. So I named, my heading. I said it's a beautiful title. I could make more things that are also beautiful titles on the same page, and they're all going to get these attributes. So first of all, here I've declared what font family I want, and this is in order of precedence. So I've said I want Helvetica if that's available. If not, just give me whatever the default sans serif font is on the system. Color. So here I'm saying I'm using RGB values and an alpha value to specify the color that I want for my title. I'm doing some alignment of the text within the element that it lives in. I'm adding some padding, and I'm using a measurement EM, an M, 1M. And this is related to the default font size of a browser, and each browser may have a different default font size. And so this helps when people do things like zoom in and scale in different ways. This is more adaptive than saying like 12 pixels because, I don't know how many pixels you might have. You might have a lot of pixels. There are different units like this that help you do your styling, and there are a lot more now that are even better. So then I say I want to make a background color, and this time instead of just doing this RGBA thing, I'm going to just call out cyan. There are a lot of named colors that exist, and so I've just used that one. I've also said I want there to be a maximum width for my title element. And I'm using the unit here of VW, which is a percentage of the viewport width. So it's roughly 30% of the width of the window that's being presented in. So you can start to see how this is getting a little more powerful here. And then I'm saying I want a border around this whole element, and I want it to be a solid border, medium thickness, and a black color. And you can specify other words here and other elements. For the color, you could also use the RGBA, a lot of options, okay? And then just for fun, I am applying a transformation, and I want to rotate it 180 degrees. So let's see what that produces. There you go. Okay. Oh, a question about line 6. The padding. Let's see. Takes a link to the document with... okay. Line 6 on the HTML document. Yeah, okay. Yes, it is that is exactly what it's doing. It's telling it where the style sheet lives, and they all live in the same folder right now. So it's just the file name. Yeah, and you're more than welcome to ask programming questions, and I will answer them to the best of my ability. So this is what we get here, which looks different than what we had before, and it's quite nice. You'll notice that it's got that nice cyan background. Turns out that's like a magenta-ish color for my font there. Also, it's been rotated 180 degrees as requested, so that's nice. It's got the border, and in the padding is kind of the distance from this text to this border here, and it kind of keeps things nice and spaced out. So there you go, a little bit of CSS, already making things look wonderful. All right, let's keep moving because it gets better. So let's talk about JavaScript. JavaScript is the only programming language or scripting language that exists in the web browser and is supported in all of the web browsers natively. There are no other choices. Anything else would require a plugin or something. I should say, I should kind of side note that there are things like WebAssembly now, but kind of still finding their way through the JavaScript world. And JavaScript is still definitely the thing we're writing, and definitely the thing that all browsers support. This programming language that is the only thing we have in all of these browsers is something that this guy wrote in 10 days in 1995, which has caused it to get a lot of kind of a bad reputation. JavaScript, if you've heard bad things, it's been a difficult language in the past. It's been weird and hacky. It's certainly gotten a lot better recently. One thing to know about JavaScript, I wrote it in 10 days. It's a great story. So JavaScript was created when the Java programming language was popular, but it is not in any way related to Java. They were just capitalizing on the buzz of the idea of the word Java there. So he worked for Netscape, in the Netscape browser, and I don't remember why exactly he wrote it in 10 days, but they needed it done fast. You should definitely you Google it and kind of read that story. It's one of those things where you build something and I don't think you expected it to become the standard that would be used forever, but here we are. So JavaScript also evolves. It has standards. It gets better and better. I've got some links here to some resources about the language itself. So there are a lot of features that keep getting added. A lot of great support. Companies like Google, people building browsers, have really contributed a lot. So here's a question. When we say exclusive, are we saying it wouldn't work on other things, or that we need to use a plugin for other languages to be in the browser? So we would need to use a plugin for other languages to be in the browser. So like Adobe Flash was very popular for a while. Shockwave was something. Silverlight from Microsoft. those are all required browser extensions and plugins for them to run, and they all had their own scripting languages that went with them. Oh, and I should say Java applets, not to be confused with JavaScript, also had plugins. Does this apply to HTML, CSS, etc.? Yeah, so the browser works in terms of these three things as a general rule. There are going to be exceptions and new features, and some browsers will support other things, and plugins can allow things to happen, obviously. If you want to have honor lock, like export all of your hard drive data to some random data center, you can install a Chrome plugin for that. Obviously, that's doing some things that are not limited to just this. But actually, it is written in JavaScript. But now I should say JavaScript also runs outside of the browser. So Node.js is an engine that interprets JavaScript for like server-side use for just pure scripting, not running in the browser. So that's become popular too. But the browser itself, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Yeah. So let us add some JavaScript to this. Okay, so here's my file, and I have made a few changes. As you will see, I have now in this tag, the strong tag for favorite, that's around favorite here, I've given it an ID, and I've called it link adjective. So ID versus class, an ID, there's only one of each ID within a page, right? So only one thing can have the idea of link, the ID of link adjective, whereas many things could be beautiful titles. And we'll see how that plays out. But I've also added down here on line 13, and you see I've done this after the body tag. I've added this script tag that says I'm going to be using some JavaScript, and the source file is pro-level JavaScript.js. And you'll see I've also closed that script tag. There's nothing in it. You can put, so you'll often see that these, the JavaScript tags will get incorporated traditionally up here on the head of the document. But what that actually does on a lot of browsers is it makes the browser wait for this to load before it continues down rendering the page. So that's why it's kind of nice, and I've gotten in the habit over the years of putting your script tag down here at the bottom. So the browser will actually load in all of this and these styles, and then it'll worry about this script. There are other ways to do that now, but for many years this was how you did that, and it's still a way of doing it. So let's take a look at the script. So here we go. Okay, so this is a separate file that I've called pro-level JavaScript.js here, and it's about 14 lines long. So for those of us who program, this looks like a programming language for the most part. So you can see on this first line, I am making a variable, and in the more recent versions of JavaScript, we use the word let when we make a variable. So I'm just making a variable called possible adjectives. You might also see the keyword var, V-A-R. That's the older way of doing it. We use let now because it's very nice. It has benefits. Anyways, and I'm setting this variable equal to be a list of text strings, right? They're comma separated. So I've got some words here: favorite, beloved, cherished, prized, treasured, dearest. Okay, so this is just an array with all of these different adjectives in it. Line 4, I'm making another variable called current adjective index, which I'm setting to 0. Okay, I'm going to use that later. And now on line 6, this is where we actually we start to work with the things that we've got in the page that exist, right? So I'm making a variable. I'm calling it link adjective element. And I'm setting it equal to this nice little clause here. Okay. So to break this down, document is an object, a thing that just exists in browsers. It's just there everywhere. and I'm calling a function that exists on document, which is getElementById, and that's why I've got the parentheses here. So I'm just saying document, I want to call this function, and I'm telling it I want to get the element with the ID of link adjective, which, if you remember, is what I named that element in our HTML earlier. And we'll see this side by side in a minute. And so that's all I'm doing. And so now link adjective element is a reference to that element on the page. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, now I've got that element on the page. I want to add an event listener. And here, for this event listener, the first thing that I'm saying is when someone clicks on this element. So there are a lot of different words you could put here, different events that can occur. We're going to use click. So with a mouse, this also translates to tapping on a touch device. Then, you see I've got a comma, so this whole second thing, so starting with this opening parenthesis all the way down to here, is an argument to this add event listener function. So I'm passing a function as an argument, and this is really common in JavaScript. So, kind of thinking about this is a shorthand notation, okay? So you see we've got these curly brace here, and we've got a curly brace here. And we've got the parentheses here. So this is just saying it's a function that accepts an event argument. This arrow is shorthand notation to say this is its own function. We'll talk about some other ways to do this. And the function is defined here. So what this statement is saying is when the link adjective element, when it gets clicked on, you're going to call this function that I've built here. And you could define this somewhere else. I've just wrote it all out here to make it easy for us to see. But whenever it's clicked, this is going to happen, whatever's in here. Okay? So what am I going to do in here? First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take that index variable, 0, right now when we start, and whatever it is, I'm going to add 1 to it. So I'm just counting, right? Each time I click, I add 1. And then I've got this if statement that says, if that count, if it's bigger than the number of items here, bigger than how many things I have in this array, which is just this array's name.length, then put it back at 0. So basically what I'm doing here is I'm just going through this array, right? 0, 1, 2, 3, and then back to 0, right? Once I get to the end. Okay, so that's all that's happening there. Now here's the actual line where something's happening on my page. Line 13, I'm saying take that link adjective element that I got here and look at its inner text, which is what was written in it in the HTML. And then I want to set that equal to whatever possible adjective is at my current index, my current counter. So I'm going to be setting it to these different words as I click on it. Okay. So let's see how that plays out. Okay. So you can see, and this is that now being applied with the page. And so every time I click on that element, it changes its text to one of those things in the array. So it's just counting through and adding them. Okay, really simple example, right? But gives you an idea of, the power of this. And you should definitely, if you go and look at the reference of for example, click, right? That's just one event. There are a ton of events. And it becomes really exciting, honestly, what you can do. So I should add, you may notice that in this animation here, showing it executing when my mouse hovers over the word, it's turning into the pointer, right? So that doesn't happen by default. So I've just added a little line of CSS down here, and this time I've used a hashtag link adjective, which is the ID of this element, remember? And I've said make the cursor a pointer whenever you're over that, if you're a cursor. And that's how you get that nice little pointer look. Also, just a side note, I've added a style for just the paragraph tag in general. So if you remember, all of this is inside of a paragraph tag. So I'm saying every paragraph tag, I want this user select to be none, which means I don't want the text to be highlighting when the mouse selects it. This is in general a bad thing to do. You shouldn't do this if people would reasonably copy and paste your text. But in some cases, we don't, the text is doing something else. So I'm just specifying it so that that text doesn't ever get selected. Also, I should note, you'll notice this -moz user select. Whenever features are new in CSS, they come with a browser prefix for the browsers that support them until they all support them, and then they remove it. So you could have, you might see a bunch of these sometimes supporting older things. Okay. So that's a really basic example of using these three things together. And I will put this code with the lecture files, with the Keynote, so you can look at it if you'd like. It's very, beginner level code, but it's just meant to show you these three, fundamentals of web technology. And you may be thinking, oh, there is no way in hell I'm going to, start with that and build an app, because that's going to be a lot, right? That's not the case. Obviously, a lot of people have done a lot of work that you can leverage and not have to work at such a low level. But it's important to know these fundamentals, because when things are broken or you want to do cool things later, helpful to know kind of how this works. So learning resources for web technologies, just in general. Mozilla Developer Network is my favorite. They've got a ton of articles and standards and information here to help you do whatever it is you want to do. Also, of equal importance is this website, caniuse.com. So, because browsers are constantly updating and changing and allowing us to do new things, they don't all progress at the same speed. Sometimes Chrome will let you do one thing, but Safari hasn't quite gotten there, and then mobile Safari definitely hasn't gotten there, right? So this website gives you a nice chart that shows you all of the major browsers in use and what they support and what they don't. Also under resources here with the sadder looking face is W3 Schools. Okay, so if you Google, pretty much any kind of problem related to web development, you'll probably get a W3 Schools article first. I will have to give it credit. W3 Schools has gotten much better over the years. But at one point, it was a horrible, horrible set of information. It literally just gave people the worst advice on how to do something and caused everyone problems later. So I recommend going to find that Mozilla developer documentation over this W3 Schools. But, whatever works, works. Also, you'll get a bunch of Stack Overflow, too. So, okay. So, what if you don't like to read? Well, good news. There are about 1 billion free videos and full courses kept up to date on YouTube, and I've listed a few of the best ones that I've encountered here. And these courses, there are a lot of them for a lot of different things, but they're very good at teaching you, how to do a lot of stuff in not that much time. These, you might have to sit down for a couple of hours and just go through this. But at the end, you know how to build, whatever it is. So there's a lot of good resources for web development. That's another one of its, good things about it. These are some channels that all have really great up-to-date information. So then let's talk about the thing that helps you not have to, build everything from scratch, right? So frameworks, libraries that are out there. So these are kind of the three biggest names I can think of for web technology today. And so the first one, Bootstrap, is a styling library. It's kind of was more targeted towards the CSS side of things originally. Trying to make things make it easy to style up a page and make it look nice quickly. It was made by Twitter. It includes some JavaScript too to make things work now, and it's gone through several versions, and it can be really useful to help you lay out something quickly. It can be, there's always this trade-off though, right? When you start to use something like Bootstrap, you have to learn Bootstrap, and you have to learn the way it does things. Now, it's using all of these fundamental things underneath it, but it's using them in a particular way, and you can run into problems where you don't know what's happening if you don't really have a grasp on what they're doing. So there is a little investment with that. React. React is from Facebook. And React.js is kind of the original that's meant for web development. React does a lot of things to help you build applications in the browser. And it kind of provides a lot of, frameworks and methodologies for doing your data model and separating that from the views and the controller. A lot of the kind of the traditional UI stuff brought to the browser. It's very popular. There's also React Native. There's React spans more than just the web now, but it can be a good way to quickly build things. Again, a lot of really quick tutorials to get up to speed on learning that. Also, Vue.js is quite popular now, which is another framework that helps you build apps in the browser. So, actually, let me just show you real quick a couple of them. So I've pulled up here, but so this is just the Bootstrap website, and so it's focused, mostly on these on web stuff, but click on some examples. So you probably, you've experienced a lot of Bootstrap in your life, whether you were aware of it or not. You can see kind of these pre-made, these are just some of the examples of things that Bootstrap makes easy. So like here's a pricing page, and they've got, let's see if I can find just some quick documentation. Here's a quick start, right? So you just include the Bootstrap library and their JavaScript, and then you can start to use things from the Bootstrap world. And so that's things like, if you want to do layout, for example, you can give these different classes, to your elements, and they have a meaning within the Bootstrap ecosystem. And you can use those to kind of build out your design. So there's plenty of documentation for that. So something like React, for example, also, oh yes, it's for building user interfaces. That's what we want to do. That's good. Got a great set of getting started material here. Even has some nice demos right in line here. You can add something to this to-do list, right? There you go. Okay. And it's showing you, how you write that for React. Now, React is it's got its own set of standards and its own way of doing things. It's all built on JavaScript and everything, but it's trying to make some of this easier for you. And it's also great because it kind of uses, focuses on components. So, building something once, and then if you need it other places, you just have to build it once, right? Vue.js is similar, right? It's also one of these, frameworks that's intended to make it easy to get up and running building whatever it is you want to build. So lots of examples here for you to look at and learn from. Good thing about web technology, plentiful in terms of the knowledge that's available out there. I do want to show you just one more thing. If you are doing web development, Visual Studio Code, if you have not used that, is a pretty good free editor for doing this kind of thing. There's a lot of nice plugins that do things for you. I don't have, well, I can show you really quickly a little bit of it. So we got it installed. I'll open it up here. Yes, so I tend to use Sublime still, but I do like Visual Studio Code. And Sublime will nag you if you don't pay for it. So Visual Studio's already got the high ground on that. So you can download this and run it on any platform. So this is just the main interface. But let me show you, for example, like it's got some great plugins and extensions that you can use. I've got a question. Let's see. As far as a prototype goes, would it be practical to try and build it with web technology when I don't know anything yet? Don't have an excessive amount of time to learn before Tuesday. I would not do it for Tuesday, right? Obviously, it's going to take you a little while to get comfortable with it, right? So I'd go ahead and try one of the prototyping tools if you're not familiar with web already for now. But I'd encourage you to definitely think about using the web stuff as you go. If you will have time to kind of invest in it, at least pick up one of the YouTube tutorial series or something and see if that works for you. Then you'll kind of get an idea about how long it'll take you to get up and running. It is really powerful, but yeah, I'd use the prototyping tools for now if you're unfamiliar and time deadline. But yeah, oh yeah, no problem. And if you guys have questions, just throw them in the chat. So anyways, you can see I've got a few installed here. What I like, and let me see if I have, see if I can just pull in this demo. So I've got some of that smart nightlight stuff, and let's see. Okay, so I'm just going to drag this folder over here. It's got some of my code in it, so here's my HTML. And I've got, do I have any JavaScript in this one? Maybe not. It may not be the one I want to show you then. But anyways, it's got my folder navigation over here. And code here. One nice thing, let me just see if this folder is maybe more of what I'm looking for. Yes, okay, this has got some JavaScript in it. Okay, so this one's a little bit more code. But so this is where you can edit everything. But one of the cool things about one of the plugins, which is Live Server, so I can right-click here on my index my HTML page, and I can click Open with Live Server. Okay, and so this is the app that I've written there, and it's opened it up in the browser for me. It's created a local web server, which is very important for a lot of things, and it will update live as I code. So I can put this on another monitor or beside me, and it's super convenient to have. I just remembered, though, I want to show you guys one other thing before we run out of time about web development. So I want to show you the tools, the dev tools, like the inspector tools that are available in all browsers. So Firefox, for example. I'm going to click here. I'm going to go down to the web developer menu. I'm going to click Toggle Tools. Okay. So this is one of the greatest things in the world if you have never seen it or used it. Let me get out of this website. I'm just going to Go to Mississippi State. I should open it in the right container. Okay. So let me pull up tools. Okay. And what this is down here is an inspector for what's being rendered in the browser. And I can undock this too if I'd like. This allows me to do some great things. So like all the HTML that's on this page, right? I can click this little target and I can kind of go in and dynamically find what I want. So any little element I can find, and I can find out, what are the layout rules that apply to this element. And I can do some other things. So if I wanted to, let's say, oh, you can't see my screen? Oh, it's back. Okay, cool. Sorry. Thank you for letting me know. So like say I wanted to go look at this element here. I can do things, in the browser, like I could just, I don't know, let's just get rid of that happiness or something, right? So, oh, that's interesting that it's losing the screen. Is it? Are you able to see it now? Still gone. That's very odd. Let's see. Let me jump back. Hello? Oh, okay. Huh. Interesting. Well, I guess that's just too much for it to process. That's amusing to me. Okay. Perhaps I should show you in Chrome. Let's see if Chrome does any better. We've got like a few minutes, so. I will just quit Firefox. It's really bizarre. Okay, let's try this again. Okay, I see it on mine. Got the Mississippi State page. So I'm going to pull up the same kind of dev tools here in Chrome. And, inspect an element. You can go in there and you can do, whatever you want to do. You can change the styling of things, like in this case, the color. Let's just zero that out or something. Maybe I'll do something like that. Right, this is all live in the browser. You can make changes to your page or whoever's page, really, that you've got. And there's lots of other great things for doing development work. So really useful. Oh, there's a warning on top of the page, low bandwidth. Huh. Well, interesting. I'll have to see what's going on there, because I'm actually, I'm just pushing the, do your changes affect the site at large? No, they're just local to your copy, just in your browser. You can set it up so that you can, like if it's something you're developing, locally, it will save them to your local file system to make that a tighter loop for you. But it's just a great tool to find out what's going on and why things are looking the way they are. And just if you've never opened it up, it's excellent. You can debug a lot of other people's problems. Anyways, I'll stop the web demos there. So action items, we've got that reflection that's going to be due Monday night. So that's watching the Apple videos. And then we've got the prototypes due by Tuesday at midnight. Also, I am almost through grading the exams. You guys did really well in general, just really good responses. And I think I'm like on question 10 right now. So, yeah. Oh, homework 2. That's a good point. Oh, yeah. Oops. I messed that up. So, yeah, there is a homework 2. And let's see. It is due. Oh, let me see if I can find it here. I don't want to tell you the wrong day. Homework is due. Tuesday is what we're guessing, and yes, it is due Tuesday as well. Yes, wow, a lot of stuff going down on Tuesday. You know what? I will push the project prototypes to Wednesday. I'll update everything for that, just because I don't like 2 things being due on the same day. You can still turn them in on Tuesday if you want, but I'm going to change the project prototype deadline to Wednesday night. So it'll be the 23rd, and the homework is due the 22nd. Yeah. Okay. Question: resubmission of design sketches. Will we be able to get full points? Oh yeah, you'll get full points as long as you just get the sketches in before Sunday night. You'll get full credit. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Well, in that case, we will meet on Tuesday. We will be virtual on Tuesday. And we'll be talking about interfaces, all kinds of interfaces. It's a pretty fun lecture. So let me know if you need anything between now and then. But otherwise, have a great weekend, and I will see you on Tuesday.